In December, I read 14 books. Ah. Hey there, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. In December, I read 14 books for a total of 3,330 pages. Two of them were nonfiction. One of them was a short story collection. I read one on my iPad, and everything else was just a regular old novel. Some of them were pretty old, so I'll tell you about them. I started off the month with two holdovers from my nonfiction November TBR. First was Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, and this was a collection of her thoughts on the subject of women and fiction. First, the way women are represented when they are written about by male authors, but also the dearth of representation by female novelists and what it would take to support them. So first she said women would need to be free from some of the responsibilities of domestic life, but also that we would need to give them literally a room in which to write and the freedom to express and represent themselves fully. Next, I read this memoir by Sophia Almara entitled The Girl Who Fell to the Earth. Her mother is a white woman from Washington State. Her father is a Bedouin Arab from Qatar who travels to the United States and starts a family here. He has a wife and two daughters before he returns to his roots. When Sophia acts out as a teenager, she's sent to Qatar for some sort of family boot camp experience, but she finds her true identity in this nomadic tribe. The Mortifications is a family saga and novelization of religious experience and Derek Palacios' debut novel. In 1980, Soledad becomes disenchanted with the Cuban politics and she takes her children, twins Ulysses and Isabel, away from the country, leaving behind her revolutionary husband Uxbal and his band of rebels. While they settle in Hartford, Connecticut, they cannot escape their strong Caribbean roots and the harvest it promises, and to which they eventually feel like they must return. President's Day is about a billionaire who tries to fix the United States presidential elections to avenge the death of his son. In true crime drama form, it features several main characters, moves between multiple settings all across the globe, and does so very well. President's Day was written by Seth Margolis, and I received a review copy from the publisher. Open City is Teju Cole's walking tour of New York City. In it, the main character is a young doctor who goes on long walks as he tries to resolve relationship and identity issues. It is a beautifully written character study, but I think the reason I love it is because of the way it represents the city and portrays the metropolitan area as its main character. Season of Migration to the North is one of these NYRB classic reprints that I'm enjoying right now. This one was originally published in the 1960s in Arabic, and the story is about an unnamed narrator who leaves his rural Sudanese village and goes to England to study poetry for several years. When he returns, he finds much is as he left it, except that there's an enigmatic man who has moved into the community, and it is this other man's story that dominates the pages. Cowboys Legacy is another arc that I got from the publisher. It is the third installment in a series that follows the romantic lives of the siblings of a Montana family. And in this one, the story centers on Flint, one of the oldest siblings and the sheriff of their rural town. His girlfriend has been kidnapped, and when he goes rogue to investigate, stories from other books in the series get linked. Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay is the third book in Elena Ferrante's Neapolitan novels. I've been doing a buddy read of the series with K.A. Hey Kay. This one is a Bildungsroman genre, so we first meet these two friends, Lenu and Lila, as young girls, and we follow their lives through every phase as Lenu recounts it when they're much older. Book 3 is subtitled Middle Time because here we see the characters in their 30s, they're married, they have children, and the story is about what life is like as they start reaping the harvest of some of their earlier decisions. We witness the falling away of some of their other juvenile relationships and also see them experience a loss of members of the previous generation. I also read an electronic version of George Orwell's parody and social commentary Animal Farm, which is about organizational structure and government and how order persists and at what cost. I also read Virginia Woolf's novel, Mrs. Dalloway, which follows the main character, Clarissa, as she explores some of the decisions that she's made in her life. She's visited by an ex-boyfriend, and so she starts to think about the men that she could have married and the life that she might have had if she had chosen differently. I read How We're Hungry, which is a short story collection by Dave Eggers, and by short story, I do mean really short. Some of these stories are so short they qualify as flash fiction, which I do appreciate sometimes. And while I don't know Dave Eggers personally, some of the stories here had this kind of autobiographical quality, which I also appreciate sometimes. There were stories that I liked, there were some that I didn't, but overall I was glad that I read this because I felt like it provided a really good introduction to Eggers' writing style, and I do have others of his books on my TBR, so this was a good way to get to know him as a writer. The Bridge of Beyond is another NYRB classic, and this one is set in Guadeloupe, which is a French Caribbean island. It follows a family of women, starting with Minerva, who was a former slave, and the daughters she raises, and their daughters, up to Telemi, who is the narrator of the story. And in true Caribbean writing style, there are many poignant proverbs that the women share with their daughters as they teach them about life, which explains why the introduction to this reprint is done by Jamaica Kincaid, who writes in a very similar way. Another NYRB classic that I read is Our Spoons Came from Woolworths by Barbara Cummins. And this one is about a young couple, Sophia and Charles, and their decision to get married against their family's wishes. They're both starving artists, but while Sophia sacrifices making art for consistent income, in the end, the young wife and mother experiences the abject disappointment that was par for the course in the 1950s Great Depression setting of this novel. My final read for 2017 was Yoko Ogawa's The Housekeeper and the Professor. This one was translated from the Japanese, and it's about these unnamed characters. A math professor who has a brain injury, which means he can't remember the recent past except in 80-minute increments. And so he pins notes to his clothes as a reminder of the people in his life and the thing that he needs to remember most, which is that he's lost his memory. The housekeeper is the young woman who the agency sends to help him and who he constantly asks, "What's your shoe size?" Then there's Root, her son, who the professor discusses baseball with. And the enduring lesson in this novel was how sometimes when we start off sacrificing for others, we really enrich our lives instead. And this was an excellent way to wrap up my 2017 reading. And that was my December reads. Leave me a comment down below and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this journal flip through and want to see more videos like this one in the future. And let's chat about any of these books that you've read. So until next time, happy reading. Bye!